yourself just so you don't have too much side noise. Okay. Good evening, North Clackamas School District community. Welcome to the August 12th open session for the North Clackamas School Board. We are meeting online today. I will give some reference to that, but not before we give our land acknowledgement, our native land acknowledgement. Director Bauer, are you ready?
She has just been re-entering the room. I think she lost contact, so she's just coming back online.
Excellent. I'll go ahead and read it to keep us moving. Wait, did I just see her come in? No go. All right, here we go. We acknowledge the land on which we sit and which we all call the North Clackamas School District, which we all call the North Clackamas School District, rests on the traditions and indigenous lands. Director Bauer, you want to finish?
Okay, sorry about that. I lost connection.
No, all good.
And village sites of the native peoples of the Kalapuya, Chinook, Molalla, and Clackamas. We take this opportunity to offer gratitude for the ability to learn, work, and be a community on this land. And we offer thanks to the original caretakers of this region. We recognize the historic policies of colonization, genocide, relocation, and assimilation that affected Indigenous and Native families, both past and present, and that will affect those in the future, and honor the resilience and revitalization of our Indigenous and Native communities. We pay our respect to the elders, both past and present, who have been the stewards of this land throughout the generations.
Thank you, Director Bauer. And in full disclosure, we as a board have made the decision not to what word am I looking for? Recognize the flag salute tonight because we are virtual. We didn't find there was a way for us to do that in a way that would be honoring the flag, but we do in this moment acknowledge that. And that is how we will move forward for this meeting. Next on our list, we've got a couple items, which is the minute and consent agenda. But before we get that, as the board chair, I do want to acknowledge why we are here virtually. I think it's important that folks understand we are working very hard. The school district is working very hard at making sure that we have a hybrid way of presenting the meetings. Over the course of these 17 months, we've learned that some folks want to meet in person, but some folks do like the online opportunity. And so we are investing in having a room that will allow us to do that. That is not ready yet. Do know that as soon as it is ready, we will go back to that. In addition to that, know that part of the reason why it's not ready is because our technology team is prioritizing our kids first and making sure that they're ready to go in the next couple of weeks. And so that has just changed our ability to do it in a more swift way. It doesn't minimize our strong desire to make sure that you have all access points, but it has changed our ability for this moment. So I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge why we are here. Starting off with our voting, we have minutes from July 1st, 2021. They're in your package boards. I'll open the floor for a motion.
I move that we approve minutes from July 1, 2021.
Okay, second.
I see it has been moved by Director Way and second by Director McVeigh. Any discussion needed? Seeing none. All opposed, please say aye. Seeing none. Approval of July 1st, 2021 minutes. Next thing we need to vote on is consent agenda, which includes employment changes. I'll open the floor for a motion.
Director Schradel, move approval of consent agenda that includes employment changes.
Director Benaloga, second.
correctly, I have a motion from Director Strado, a second from Director Benaloga. All opposed, please say aye. Hearing none. Employment changes from the consent agenda has been approved. All right, we're moving right along into our community requests. Before we begin community requests, I do want to acknowledge and appreciate that we've received several different forms of community communications. And I'm going to take 1 second before we do community requests to bullet point all of the points that we have heard within every single email that has been given to us between 7:15 and 8:12. Some of the under 12, this individual would like to see mask. Summer program, the fact that it was optional for mask was in question to this individual. There's some quarantine of cohorts concerns. Low vaccination rates in our community specifically is a concern. 3 feet with vaccinated students should not be required. Middle school age dynamics is complicated due to the vaccination access at 12. Siblings too young for vaccination is a concern. Data sent on to us was on 0 risk to children. Unenrolled, this particular family unenrolled because they felt like their voice was not heard. Another family said that people that have unenrolled should have a voice. Desire for masks to be a personal family decision. Desire for more normal experience. Mass social distancing is an unnecessary barrier. No desire for agreement should be made with unions. Strong desire for 5 full days. Flu and COVID deaths were given to us in a comparison chart. Follow the science and mask all children was demanded. Open school board meetings to the public. Strong desires to reduce the spread. Virus doesn't care about anyone's politics. The virtual program should be for the uncomfortable. There are other 2 districts who are going against Kate Brown, the governor. Tell the Governor Brown this is not her decision. Reverse Governor Brown's decision. Hospitalization should dictate our decision. Go against the sidestepping of Governor Brown. Mask make it difficult to hear and breathe. All should be vaccinated before we go back to school. Mask all day is not healthy. Concerns on lunch protocol and not being masked. Questions on the survey and the reasoning we picked those questions. Reinstate CDL hybrid with the variance increase. Addressing racism in North Clackamas School District is an issue. Alternative plans should be made due to the variance, and people of color are of higher risk. I wanted to make sure that the community hears that we have read them all. There is a bullet of each thing. We read everything that you send us. And at this time, community requests allow you to voice your opinion vocally. I will read the law or our rules around it before we begin. Anyone wishing to speak before the board, either as an individual or as a member of a group, may do so by following the district's guideline for public comment. These printed guidelines are available at each board meeting. Any individual desiring to speak will submit their name, address, and the group, if any, that is represented, and a speaker should give their name and the group, if any, that is represented, and should limit his or her presentation to 3 minutes. Time may be extended at the discretion of the board chair. Speakers may offer objective criticism of district operations and programs that are of concern to them. The board is restricted from hearing and will not consider complaints regarding any individual district staff member or any person connected with this district. I will have signs for you when you are at your halfway point. It will be green. When you have 30 seconds, I will show you the orange. When you reach 3 minutes, if I feel as though you are going to go on for a very long time, I will cut you off gracefully, nicely. It has nothing to do with my opinion of you. It is simply because we have business we must continue. All right, Miss Sandra, who do we got first?
We had 5 people sign up to speak. Only 2 have entered the meeting. The first one to speak will be Julie Scarpole.
I knew I could count on Julie on showing up. How are
Hello.
you? Good to see you.
Good. First of all, thank you for doing that bullet point. That I think that will go a long way in making people feel like things are being read and heard. So thank you very much. I know it took some time. And side note before I get started, I promise I will get started, but my mom was on the school board growing up in the 80s. So we didn't have email. All of those were phone calls to my house. So you guys should be super thankful you have email. All right. I want to thank Dr. James and her team for putting together a reopening plan. I know that takes a lot of time, and as Chair Ford just pointed out, there are tons of things to consider. So thank you. The one that you posted a few weeks ago looked very balanced and thoughtful. And I also just want to publicly thank the NCEA for showing a willingness and a cooperation that seems to be lacking in other unions across the country. So I just wanted to publicly say thank you. I really get the feeling that you want to put kids first and you want to be back in school. And so thank you for doing that. I know tonight the reopening plan will be discussed. And so I also know, though, that the Delta variant is on everyone's mind, and understandably so. As you consider what this year will look like for children and family, I just want to remind you that according to the OHA, as of last night, the COVID fatality rate for children in Oregon is still 0. And currently there are 7 children hospitalized in the entire state with COVID, even with the Delta variant. I know that there's more to consider than fatality rates and hospitalizations, such as long COVID, but there's also things to consider like depression, anxiety, suicide ideation, low literacy and math scores, shortened lifetime earnings, diabetes, drug abuse, dropout rates. And yes, most of these things existed before COVID, but they have been exacerbated by the prolonged mitigation strategies kids have had to live under. My point is this: we need to not just consider how to keep kids safe from COVID. We need to help kids recover from the stress and pressure that the last 18 months have put on them. And we need to understand that the policies that we make kids live under have long and short-term effects. We need to balance the actual risk COVID poses to children against the effects that mitigation strategies are having and will continue to have on our kids for years. That's all. I know I'm tired. I know you're tired. I know our kids are tired. It feels like deja vu all over again, to quote Yogi Berra. And I'm not here to make demands or to tell you how to do your job or anything like that. I had a whole bunch of stories about the vulnerable kids that I work with and some of the kids that I'm raising. I'm not going to share those. I want you to think about how the mitigating strategies are a huge deal to some kids and their families. So please don't gloss over that in the quest to minimize and have 0 COVID cases in school. Don't minimize that by saying mask, distancing, or whatever other strategy is not a big deal. It is to some, and that needs to be factored into the policies that are in place this year. Look critically at the data, not the headlines about kids and COVID in Oregon. We have 2nd graders entering the school year who have never had a normal year of school. We have kids who have lived a quarter or a third of their school life under COVID restrictions. So as quickly as you possibly can, please let kids be kids in school. Let kids see people smile at them. Let them hear their teachers clearly. Let them develop socially and emotionally in as normal an environment as possible. And please show a concern about more than just COVID and let your policies and plans reflect a care and concern for the whole child. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Miss Sandra, who do you have next?
Next up, we have Karen Pyatt.
Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Welcome.
thank you for doing the boards digitally and continuing that. I think that's a great option. I work with various different volunteer groups that have also turned to make it into a hybrid option. And I love that we're doing that. And thank you for working on these plans and giving options to people. I am here as a mother to a third grader from Milwaukee El Puente. And I do have some concerns to bring up. How do you propose to keep the children 3 feet apart minimum when they're eating, especially after working and volunteering in multiple schools, seeing the overcrowding that is possible, especially at Milwaukee El Puente in the lunch area, kids being pushed off the benches and things like that, and not having enough space for children. My other concern is, why are we forcing families into not choosing the VOP program, the virtual online program, when they're also in a magnet program? Because we've held their spot last year, and some of these children thrive greatly, even in the dual language immersion. And we want that option again, but we're not allowed that option because those spots are not being held for our students. And I understand that we are family that we can take the time to do this and stuff like that. And I understand that there's other children that need to get back to school. So why are we not going through the equity lens of North Clackamas? The 6 questions that we have, and then the 6 detailed questions that we have as a school district when we're looking through our equity lens. If any of you need this, I can always email it to you. Because we don't have vaccines for those that are 11 and older or younger. We need to make an equitable stance in this area for all our families, because COVID hasn't gone anywhere. It hasn't stopped. And again, with this, I also have not seen, or a lack thereof, of a contingency plan, a backup plan, that plan for the best, but prepare for the worst. We need to be including all employees. That includes secretaries, ed coaches, sports coaches, everybody in between, kitchen, transportation, everybody. And we need to have that contingency plan. And I haven't seen that at a district level. And I was also very disappointed at our response to the June 30th mask mandate lift, where we allowed for summer school to be optional after the CDC and the APA said that children and those that are indoors should be, no matter their vaccine status, be masked. And that wasn't keeping our children safe. We can do fire drills, we can do shooting drills, but we can't do a mask mandate, and we can tell children how to dress, but we made this optional. And how do we, if we do end up lifting it at another point, how do we stop the bullying of children? We've already experienced this as adults, and as our children have also experienced bullying, because we have chosen to wear a mask indoors. And another question is, how do you propose to ensure that surfaces of the classroom be cleaned and sanitized every day? Before COVID, you didn't have enough janitorial staff, because I stayed afterwards with teachers and cleaned their carpets, and I would wipe down their common areas such as tables and desks. And we, again, don't have that support. So how are we ensuring that this is happening even at a secondary level? And are we giving enough time in between classes to ensure that this is happening? And I just want to thank you again for your time. And I appreciate that you have taken the time to listen to me and my concerns.
Thank you very much, Ms. Karen. Before we close.
Excuse me, Chair Ford.
Yeah.
We had Maria Carlin has entered the meeting. She had signed up to speak.
Okay, perfect. Let's do it. Hi, Maria. Can't hear you. You're on mute.
Hi, thank you very much for,
there you go.
Yeah, I just signed up my question earlier today, so I appreciate that. Yeah, so obviously, and I'm just coming in, so apologies if things have already been mentioned, but we are new to the district. We just moved to Milwaukee, and my son is going into 1st grade, so he still doesn't know what it's like to be in school full time. But I am concerned, like, he knows how to wear a mask and keep it on. I haven't tried to make him wear a mask for a full school day yet, but so I'm wondering, should, I hope it doesn't happen, but should things get worse with the Delta variant, and the governor decides that the schools have to close, do you have a plan in place, or is it just the same thing we did last year?
So Maria, I just want clarity. You have 3 minutes for which you have 1 minute and 45 seconds left.
Mhm.
This is not, we do not communicate with community requests. That is not the format that a ORA requires or allows. So you can take your, I pause your time. You still have 1 minute and 45 seconds left to speak, but there will be no answering of any questions at this
I
time.
see. I see. Okay. I am, just to voice my concern then, I get medical privacy and such, and there are a lot of employers that are starting to require their employees to get vaccinated. And I do find it concerning that the schools are not requiring staff and teachers to be vaccinated. I get that you can't give me the information if somebody has or has not been vaccinated, but given the choice, if I knew who was vaccinated, I would certainly make sure that my son was avoiding being in a classroom all day long with an unvaccinated individual. So that's, I can't imagine I'm alone in this. And I imagine that there are a lot of parents concerned about the fact that there are teachers and everybody, free country and all that, but, concern for children that can't get vaccinated at all yet is, it's a pretty high concern for me. So I don't know what, if anything, will be done about it, but just know I'm concerned, especially, coming into a new school year. And I know that at home is an option, but not necessarily an option for everybody. So, all right, I guess I know that I have a little more time, but I don't have anything else to say. So I appreciate you listening. And I hope that you take it under advisement and maybe take some sort of action in that regard.
Thank you,
Thank
Maria.
you.
We thank you for your time this evening, and thank you to everyone that came in and spoke about community requests. Before we close this segment, I do want to remind everyone of what our meetings are. And I think this is an important thing for us to reiterate. As a school board, we are required to follow state rules on how a public meeting can be held and what can be discussed. There can be no surprises, right? And so because of that, a lot of times the meeting can feel very much disconnected from the current issues. And that's what community requests is for. It's your opportunity to tell us how you feel, but unfortunately, we cannot respond in that moment on how you feel. We can take your information and use that to make informed decisions, but it is not an in the moment gratification answer or discussion. Unfortunately, that's the way public meetings work. And it's a legal thing. It is not a North Clackamas thing. It is not a Libra Ford thing. It is a legal thing. So I would suggest, if you don't like that you talk to those folks who actually made those rules. And most of them don't look like me, just to be clear. Moving right along, next thing on our agenda is the board recognitions. Who is presenting this? Is this me?
This
no name.
is me.
Oh, it's you. Okay.
Yes.
Dr. James.
Yes.
Okay.
I got you
There
here.
was no name. I was like, wait, hold on. What am I doing? Got it.
Absolutely. Well, good evening. Tonight, I'm honored to share that the North Clackamas School District has been awarded by the School Business Officials International Association the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting for the fiscal year ended 2020. The association's mission is to promote and recognize excellence in financial reporting. Our finance team was awarded this distinguished honor for their dedication and transparency to our financial and economic state of the district, including our communication mechanisms in building trust and engaging with our school community, while actively demonstrating their commitment to financial stewardship and transparency. I want to thank and congratulate our finance department for their hard work and well-deserved award, truly well-deserved. They are some of the hardest working folks that we have. Cars often in the parking lot until late into the evening. And I want to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Gay Ellen, to share a few words on behalf of her team who has joined her here tonight in honor of this celebration. So congratulations. And Gay Ellen, is there anything that you'd like to say?
Well, I just wanted to thank especially Carrie Pinto and Donna Burke and Lori Culp, who helped put this together. But Carrie and Donna and our team work very hard all year long to make sure that our financial statements are accurate and transparent. And it takes a lot of work to put together financial statements that that follow generally accepted accounting principles and all of the Government Accounting Standards Board's pronouncements, and has a clean opinion from our auditors and from all of the federal and state agencies that we work with. And I just really, really appreciate all the hard work and time that it takes to put that in, and I congratulate my team.
Well done. That's an awesome award. It's a major deal. Fiscal responsibility is a big part of our existence. Without that, we don't have much. Any board members have any comments about this award or anything they'd like to say? You can raise your hand. I can see you all. Director Bauer.
Oh, I just want to thank and acknowledge all the hard work, Galen and your team. I know you had bargaining this year too, and I think Tori was involved in that. That takes a lot of extra work, analysis, but as a budget committee meeting member, I appreciate the book that you put together and your explaining and bringing in special issues to explain to us and answering our many questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just for clarity, Dr. James, Gay Ellen is what you just said. I've always called you Galen. Which one is correct?
It's Gay Ellen. Gay Ellen.
Gay Ellen. Excellent. Thank you for that clarity. I will never say it incorrectly again. Names are important.
Thank
They
you.
identify each other. So Gay Ellen, I appreciate you and your team. We appreciate you and your team. Thank you for all your hard work. Next on our agenda is the Ready Schools Safe Learners Resilience Framework presentation. We got a couple of folks that are doing that because this is really important. So I'll pass it over to you, Dr. James.
Fantastic. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to start us off and share that on June 25th, the Oregon Department of Education released an updated framework for school districts on how we were to move forward with the operations of schools for summer and fall programming for the 2021-22 school year. This framework is titled Ready Schools Safe Learners Resiliency Framework. It is now on August 12th in its third update and will continue to be updated, and it stands as our guide for our back to school reopening plans. Tonight, Assistant Superintendents of Operation and Education, Cindy Dutchin and Dr. Yvonne Dibley will share our plans to date and next steps. And we're looking forward to hearing board feedback on the recommendations presented tonight. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Cindy to get us started.
Great, thank you. First of all, I'd like to share this slide. I'm not an expert graphic artist, but this was my attempt at sharing all of the constant changes that have happened over the last 18 months. And we often get emails, why didn't you follow the CDC guidance when it came out? Why didn't you follow this guidance? What are you doing about this? And I just really want to share and help people understand that we often get the same communication the same time it goes live in the Oregonian or on KGW or other media outlets. Sometimes we have a heads up that something is coming out tomorrow, but we never have the actual document. So between March 2020 and the governor's executive orders of stay home, save lives, we had multiple reiterations. The Ready School Safe Learners guidance didn't come out until that summer. We had 4 revisions over the following 4 months. Throughout all of that time, we continued to deliver meals to homes of every home that needed it. We distributed Chromebooks, thousands of Chromebooks, hotspots. We published an online curriculum. We developed our comprehensive distance learning program. We started up a virtual online program. We were getting ready for hybrid over the summer. And then we had to work with going back and not doing hybrid because those orders changed. And as we constantly moved around the year, we're going to start sports, only outdoor training. Oh, now we're going to have sports in different seasons, but they have to wear masks. They don't have to wear masks. They have to show proof of vaccination. Continuing to plan for the following school year, deciding if we're going to be able to uphold our virtual online program again, answering multiple and hundreds of questions a week that come in, constantly playing catch up. And I also, I told Assistant Superintendent Dibley today, I feel like now I should take this, because this was created last week before the newest order. I feel like I should turn this graphic on upside down so that it starts at the bottom, goes up, and then all of a sudden we're at chutes and ladders, and now there's a chute that we're going back down to some other level. And I think that's our reality, that we are going to continue to bob and weave and have to pivot at the ready. So do we have an exact hybrid plan in place for next year should things go back and slide down another chute? No, but we're working on it. We're constantly working on it and doing all of the other jobs that our custodians normally do, our teachers normally do, our custodians, our HR staff, our payroll staff, our maintenance workers, just trying to paint a little bit of a picture that this has been crazy town for all of us. We really do believe that we have delivered the best program that we possibly can and continue to ask for that feedback, that parent and that community feedback and that staff feedback is so important. But I just wanted to put that graphic out there. And if we need to create a chutes and ladders game out of this, I'm sure somebody's itching to do that. So what's currently happened, July 30th, state agencies aligned mask guidance with the CDC to return to in-person instruction. That was a flip from what had already been told. August 3rd, there was new guidance again, requiring masks while indoors. There are not all the other recommendations from ODE are highly recommended for schools, and they ask us to consult our local health authority. And in our case, that's Clackamas County Health, Public Health, and also following OSHA standards. Oregon Occupational Safety and Health Administration governs how we operate with our employees. Because we are a very large employer, any employer has to follow the OSHA standards. They're not always in sync with these other agencies. And so sometimes you have to bob and weave and try to make things that work for everybody. We are seeing them come more into alignment lately, and we're grateful for that. Some things that are within our consideration as well that a lot of people don't really understand, and I don't know why you would. I don't look these things up every day if I weren't in this business. But there was a House bill that passed allowing us some limited liability insurance. So in case there was any lawsuit against us during COVID. So that is now gone, and we are now losing we're at least at risk of losing that protection. If we were to open in person and not be in compliance, we must be in compliance with ODE and OHA in order to make sure that our insurance coverage is still in place. In addition, we've seen in writing, it's not 100% clear how this would work. They're writing the rules around this, but there's a statement around there that there would be a state fine issued to schools who were not in compliance. And the numbers we've been seeing is $500 per school per day. Again, we're waiting on the rule of what that would look like. This summer, it's very important to us to get that feedback Really, really grateful for parents who read their email in the summer. We try to push it out on social media as well. But when the mask mandate came out and it was optional, we thought we need to get people's sense on this, like how safe do they feel? So we did do an initial survey. We just finished up that survey, and then a new mandate came out. So that survey, while we still have the results and did publish it, it's in our back to school guide so people can see those results. That became a non-issue for us once the new state guidance came out. However, we have that data and it's good to have that. We also developed our draft back to school plan. It's a few weeks ago, initiated that, launched that. And we started what we've been using as our feedback tool for the last year and a half is Thought Exchange. And that Thought Exchange was issued. We had lots and lots of feedback. While a lot of it was on masks, we were asking for feedback on all of the components of our back to school plan. And we want to make sure people understand that we are looking at all of the components, and we wanted to hear their feedback. We initiated a resiliency framework planning team. Resiliency framework is the framework that we will have to submit to the state of Oregon to say that we are in compliance and these are our plans. And so we developed a team to review all of our protocols, our processes, create checklists of what we needed to make decisions on or research. And we're putting that plan together now for the state. So that team has been meeting a couple times a week for the last month. We've also been using the Thought Exchange feedback in order to develop that plan. We've been meeting with leadership from both OSEA, which is our classified union group, as well as our teachers union leadership, our administrators, our legal teams, our insurance carriers, all of the parts that do play a role in how we make our decisions to provide you, our board, and our staff, our community, and our students the best possible information. So that guidance, we've updated that back to school plan. It is in your packet. It's will be available on our website tomorrow for the public, although it's in the back to school, it's in the board packet on our website. So it is there, but it's not on our back to school website. It will be there tomorrow. We reinstated the mask policy following the state guidance. We have ordered that tech equipment that Chair Ford referenced at the start of the meeting. We do want to continue to live stream these meetings. We have quadrupled isn't even the term for how many people are now watching that live stream. Typical board meetings, we would have 2 to 5 community members, sometimes 0. If there was a school presentation, we might have 20 or 30 parents joining to see their kids presenting. But just typical interest in what happens at a board meeting, it's usually been under 5. It's been in the single digits. We have a couple hundred people watching our meetings live on YouTube, plus a couple hundred more that go back and watch it at a different time while it's not live streaming. We want to continue that. We do appreciate the engagement. It's important to us, but we need to get that tech in place in order to make that happen. So the Thought Exchange, it's live on our website and it's in the report, but just some top thoughts. These are from our parents, our families. The thoughts were about making sure that those who are sick, please stay home. They also want to make sure that they understand what the protocols are and have clear expectations. Very strong stance that we really want our kids back in school, and they're ready for that full curriculum and full-time learning, and we get that. The students are concerned about each other. We have caring students, and they want to make sure that their fellow students are getting the help that they need. They want to make sure that they're protecting each other and not spreading COVID. They want to be able to protect themselves as well. They also know that in-person learning is good, and they want to get back, but they also wanted to do it safely. These are the top thoughts that rose. There are lots and lots of other thoughts that may have differed from these, but these are the thoughts that rose to the top when they go through the star rating. And if you recall, you put in a thought, and then you see a thought, and then you judge that thought. Does that resonate with me on a 1 to 5 star scale? So these are the top thoughts in that star rating. Oops, missed one. There's our staff top thoughts. Really looking for vaccinations, if not fully masked. Concern about the number of people in any one given space and the furniture that goes in there, and how do they possibly manage trying to keep some distance between students in the classroom setting and in other settings as well. So our back to school plan, the key points definitely includes a full 5-day school week, in-person regular bell schedules that we had previous to COVID. That is definitely one of our goals, and that is our plan. Face coverings will be required for anyone inside a school building or inside or riding any of our district transportation. We want to foster and ensure that culture of respect, making sure that everyone understands and doesn't create any unsafe spaces, comments, bullying. Everybody should feel safe to wear their mask, or when they're outside, not, because right now outdoor masking is not required. And if you choose to wear your mask outside, that's absolutely your prerogative, and we will make sure staff ensures that happens. We also know that masking is going to help us avoid any quarantine and disrupting the learning continuity. The current ruling, and I say current because as things change, we have to change as well. We know our local health provider, and this is backed by the CDC as well, will not require anyone to be quarantined, even if they were in that, what we call that zone, in that within that 3 feet or 6 feet distancing area, if we can say with certainty that everyone in that area was masked. And so if that's part of our protocol and all students are supposed to wear masks all day long, that's different than a quick mask break and my nose was exposed for 2 minutes. This is that 15 minutes at a time. We will not have to quarantine. So if a bus is fully masked and there's some kind of an exposure, we know that we won't have to disrupt that entire cohort. We might have to disrupt the few around them, but not the entire cohort and shut full classrooms down. We will be looking at every single possible way we can maintain 3 feet to the extent possible in our settings in our schools. We are going to continue to promote and provide the materials and supplies folks need for frequent hand washing and sanitizing. We'll continue those stations that are all around our buildings now. That's just going to become part of our practice and what we do. Cohorting, a lot easier at the elementary level when kids stay together in one class. Sometimes there's mixing up with reading groups and whatnot, but for the most part, our elementary schools are going to really look at seeing how they can keep those cohorts consistent as much as possible. It's just not feasible in how we operate middle schools and high schools, and probably in 90% of middle schools and high schools across this country. It's just that's the way we run it. And there's, with 8 classes or 4 a day plus buses, you add in the extra that we also put kids on buses to go to Sabin-Schellenberg and they mix with other schools. It's just very complex. And so we're going to be really pushing on the mask mandate and the 3-foot distancing. As I mentioned, the quarantining, we will not require if they've been wearing masks, but will require whatever the Clackamas County Public Health tells us to. And so we help them with that contact tracing. We provide seating charts. Our nurses work nonstop and really work hard to make sure they've contacted every individual. And they give guidance, really, really good, solid guidance on, this is your case, you need to isolate or you need to stay home and quarantine. And we work through every single case individually. And so it's really important also that parents call in and let us know when they've had an exposure in their home, because that helps us with this process. At this time, there is no requirement for vaccination. Again, we take our restrictions and our guidance from the state. If that changes in the future, we certainly will share that. But this time, we're not requiring vaccinations for school staff or for students. Strongly encouraging, providing opportunities, not requiring. We are offering our virtual online program. I won't take much time on that. Yvonne's going to go through a whole section on that, but we do have openings. We will be offering that again for families who want to stay fully remote. Athletics, as of right now, all athletic programs will be as they have been previously. The seasons are back where they have been traditionally. We will continue to follow whatever OSAA guidance there is Today, that happens to be the heat index. And so there's a lot of different guidance that don't have to do with COVID. We always follow their guidance. Right now, face coverings will be required all indoors. There is a sentence in the governor's orders around competitive sports. And so we're seeking further guidance before we give actual guidance to our coaches, but we're working on that feverishly to find out what about those athletes during active participation. But right now, spectators, anybody just walking in a gym to watch, the masks will be required. Ventilation and cleaning, we've hired additional staff in our maintenance department. We continue with our stringent cleaning protocols. Sanitizing materials will be available in all classrooms at all times, but all of our custodians are on a schedule to make sure all of that cleaning happens. All of our HVAC improvements have been upgraded. We have the filters that we need. They get on back order sometime, but we're continuing to try to keep our supply up and changing those regularly. And I think, there we go. We've been trying to keep you updated. This is the data of the number of employees, students who have been either isolated or quarantined during the summer. So these are our summer programs, and you can see the numbers there. Had a little bit of an uptick. At times, you can see it's pretty solid all around, but just trying to give you real data. These are the ones reported to us, the ones our nurses this summer reached out to and gave direction to. And so our risk management team right now is monitoring this along with our nurses, and we'll be moving that over to our family support department here shortly. Okay, turn it over to Dr. Dibley.
Thank you so much. Good evening. As you know, our virtual online program provides the necessary continuation of education for students and families that need this option. Enrollment since June continues to fluctuate, and you can see the changes in enrollment from June to August. Families have the option to enroll, as Assistant Superintendent Detchen mentioned, via our Google form that opened in early July, and it's listed on our website. Enrollment is changing daily. For example, as of August 9th, we were at 624 students. And as of today, that has increased to 668 students. We are continuing to analyze the staffing as the enrollment fluctuates, because we want to make sure that our programs are staffed correctly. Compared to our overall district student demographics, the percentages are similar, with a slight increase in the percentage of Asian and Hispanic Latino students. The number of students with documented disabilities have remained the same. To better understand the decisions of our parents, a survey was sent to 625 parents in our virtual online program. 120 responses, representing a little bit over a quarter of the students enrolled, were received, and 23.3% of the survey respondents were or have an IEP, and 2/3 of those were enrolled in our virtual online program last year. You can also see the distribution by grade as well as race and ethnicity. You may wonder why parents shared or what concerns or what the reasons were of parents that shared for the reasons of wanting to be on the virtual online program. And so here we have 50% of the respondents that identified COVID-related concerns as a primary reason to enroll in the program. You may wonder what parents shared under the other category, and comments that were shared had anywhere between 3 or so comments that were related to masks. Some were related to lack of transportation, curriculum, monitoring the learning, and a predictable routine. Those were all very important for parents. Per board request, we further disaggregated the data for our parents of color. It is known that the pandemic has hit our communities of color in disproportionate ways. Therefore, it is no surprise that the reasons cited reflect the needs of the community. Comments emphasized were a worry about the impact of COVID on their multi-generational homes. Additionally, family members in high-risk situations, lack of vaccination for their children, and an overall fear of unknown risks of the virus itself. While it is true that distance learning has proved to be difficult for many students, online learning has also proved to have its share of benefits. And parents expressed that flexible schedules were welcomed, and as well as stating that students are doing really well. Additional comments shared by our parents of color include that there was a great deal of student independence. They really loved the teacher interaction. They cited student growth and a safe environment. When comparing these to the students that have identified IEPs, those were echoed as well. So anybody receiving special education services, those themes were also echoed. So in summary, we're fortunate to be able to provide this option for students and families. We know it is important as part of our back to school plan. The full year option has moved to a semester option to accommodate various needs. And returning to in-person environment is subject to availability. Students may return to school where we have room for enrollment versus their home school. We're happy to share that school supplies will be distributed. We have backpacks for students in both primary and secondary that may need those. And in addition, our food pantry and clothes closets will continue to serve our families in need.
Are you waiting for me, Yvonne?
I am.
That's mine. Sorry about that. In addition, we are definitely going to continue our fantastic partnerships with our mental health providers in all of our schools. We're very proud to be opening 2 additional school-based health centers, both at Clackamas High School and Adrian C. Nelson High School. Putnam and Milwaukee's health centers have continued to stay open. Even though we closed our doors March of 2020, they continued to stay open through all of that for services. Some of them were telehealth appointments and others were in-person appointments. The Clackamas Center is anticipated to be, it's under construction. It's anticipated to be completed midsummer. We'll need to do some punch list items, get our provider in there. So we are hoping to have that open by October for sure. And the center at Nelson is ready. And so it should open with the school when we do invite and welcome all of those students to their brand new high school. Our care program, that's our before and after school program, and on some non-school days as well, was in hiatus this last 18 months. Well, I should say for the year and a half. It's back open. We had lots of summer programs happening with care, continue to happen, and we are expanding from 5 school sites previously before COVID to 6 school sites. However, we are holding some spots, not filling them 100% because we're having a hard time staffing, having a hard time getting people staffed, and we certainly don't want to have unsafe situations where we have more students than we can provide that care for. So if anybody's looking for a job, we are hiring. These are mostly part-time jobs after school. Would love to have some more applicants for that, but we're filling them. I know our Director of Community Services, Natalie Whistler, is interviewing constantly. Our recruiters working on that as well. We hope to continue with our after-school programs to the extent possible. They'll follow all of the same protocols as we do during the school day. I mentioned athletics earlier, again, following OSAA guidelines, and also ODE and OSHA and OHA and all the other acronyms that provide guidance to us. And field trips to be determined. We don't really know what that looks like yet. Certainly open to those experiences. They're very meaningful for our students. We want to do them, but we want to do them safely, and we don't want to implement them right away until we kind of get our feet wet a little bit and see what it looks like with everybody back into school, but to be determined. And this is going to be my mantra. We are ready. We may not be ready to open our schools tomorrow to all 17,000 students, but we are certainly working on it, and we will have every plan in place that we need to by the deadline. And I think we've proven that. As I mentioned, that chutes and ladders graphic from the beginning of this presentation, every single time there was a change in state guidance, there was a change in law, there was a new recommendation, and we were forced to close, open, CDL, hybrid, mask, unmask. We were ready. We were ready to do that. We weren't ready when somebody called us 2 minutes after hearing it on the news, but we were ready a week later. And that's where we continue to do it. That is our North Clackamas promise, is that we continue to work on this, and we will be as ready as we possibly can for all of our students. Thank you. Love to address questions. We do have several staff here if there are things that Dr. Dibley or I cannot answer.
Thank you guys for that wonderful presentation. Lots of information to digest. So let's all just take a breath for a second. Man, questions, comments from the board. If you raise your hand, I'll get an order going. I see you, Director Perez, you go ahead and start us off.
Thank you, Chair Ford. Thank you, Dr. James and Dr. Dibley and Assistant Superintendent Detchen for the presentation. I think it was Assistant Superintendent Detchen was talking about the constant changes over the last 18 months. And as you were talking about that and the multiple variations and fluctuations and updates and revisions, I felt this exhaustion come over me. It's been exhausting, but you've risen to the challenge and you have been ready. It's very admirable what all of you and your staff have done during these last 18 months, despite all the fluctuations and changes. One question I have is, I'm glad to hear that you mentioned we're going to have a physical and mental health support. I'm glad to hear that at all of our schools. And one question I have, I know last year you created that one page, I think it was a one-page color. Let me see if I have it here. It's this right here. And I was wondering, because this has everything on there as far as mental health counselors, medical care, food, housing support, someone to speak with right now. And I'm just wondering if we will be continue to be promoting this with our families this year. This was just a wonderful thing, and I hope we continue with that, assuming we will.
Absolutely. Our executive director, Joe Bridgman, is here, and I think he just heard that and probably wrote that down, and we'll make sure that gets distributed again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Perez. Director Way, anything?
Yes, thank you, Chair Ford. I have a couple of questions. Just one question that I have was around some of those numbers that you were sharing around the COVID summer school. And unfortunately, some of the folks who had to go into quarantine. Do we know what percentage were vaccinated and not vaccinated? And if we can't disclose that information for privacy reasons, that's fine. I was just curious if we looked at that.
We do monitor it. It's closely held by just a couple of folks and our nurses that have that medical knowledge. It's not distributed widely, but we can provide percentages. Yeah, I don't have that.
I think that'd be sure. And I know that it was a very small number. So again, if you could provide just general percentages, I think that would be helpful. And I think related to that, I wanted to ask, what are we doing, or I guess what role do we have in continuing to promote just vaccinations and to our community members, adults, families, as well as for kids over 12, because I absolutely agree that masking, washing hands, social distancing will, definitely help with curbing the, the now very contagious Delta variant. But I also know, based on science and evidence, that vaccines also really work. So it needs to be in our toolkit. Just my belief. So just wondering, are we continuing to partner in the fall with clinics and the county health department and other partners?
We've made ourselves available anytime they want to hold a clinic, that we would certainly partner with them or at least share the information. All of our health centers would have the opportunity to share that information and partner with us. And our nurses have been great too. We've even provided drive-through clinics. They weren't necessarily for our staff or our students at that time. They were the early emergency workers. We had drive-through clinic at Clackamas High School a couple of times. So we absolutely want to be helpful in that. We've also, when we see our own clinics and things that are close by, we push it out on social media as well. I believe it might even be in our guidebook about where to call to get those vaccination appointments.
Great, thank you. And I just want to make a quick comment that I know that for a lot of families, they're excited to get back into school and, excited to see their peers. And I just feel like schools are also community centers for a lot of folks, and not just where kids learn, but it's where kids socialize and families interact with each other. So, if we can, and I know that there's several schools who have done on-site vaccinations in their neighborhood schools as, again, a way for families to get more access to this. So I just wanted to leave that comment.
Thank you, Director Way. Director Schradel, anything?
I do not have anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Benaloga.
Yes, thank you, Chair Ford, and thank you to the executive team. I feel like I'm a broken record whenever I come on and I say that it's just, again, more hurdles and Herculean effort and always rising to the occasion, but thank you. I actually do have a couple of questions and then one clarification from Dr. Dibley's one of those slides. Can we talk a little bit about the precautions? What are we thinking for meal times? What are the precautions that we're going to be able to take when the kids are eating?
We are currently working with our level directors on that, because just thinking about the fact that different schools have different demands, different schedules, different aspects in regards to distancing that they have to think about. So the nuances are very particular to different school communities. So we are currently in those planning stages, and we'll definitely get back to you as soon as we have more details.
Excellent. I appreciate that, because I think it's very important that we all understand that each building is going to have a very different framework, because things are going to work in one building and not in another. So it's not a cookie cutter solution. So thank you for that. And then what is the thought process and how are we with the framework as far as dealing with learning loss if kids are ill or need to be quarantined? How are we going to be handling learning loss and missing school?
Yeah, and that is definitely another aspect of our work, right? Thinking about how we are looking at how we are assessing students, how we're working with all of our teachers and our coaches, and again, our level directors are going to be very involved in this process. And one of the aspects that was clear is that for some families, we've actually had a lot of learning, and that despite the obstacles of this pandemic, that students have learned. So definitely thinking about not just the learning that's happening in our schools, but a lot of the learning that has happened for all of us during this last year plus. And that is definitely an area where we will continue our focus, and we'll do some further reporting so that everyone is aware of how we are going to be benchmarking students and assessing them when they come back.
Excellent. Yes, I think that through all of this, we have all learned a tremendous amount as well. So I appreciate that. And I also really appreciate you touching on just the mental health and, continuing academic recovery and just, again, celebrating those kids that did really well. I had a question, and I may have misunderstood. On one of the slides, Dr. Dibley, you talked, it was about the virtual online program, but then students possibly needing to go to a nearby school that had space availability. Can you clarify exactly what that was about?
Absolutely. So one of the aspects that, well, we had a year-long option for the online option, and then we switched it to a semester option as well, so that gave the opportunity for students to come back to their school or in-person learning at a natural break. However, with everyone being organized and already being in in-person learning, we have to make sure that there's space and that there's the distancing requirements that are needing, that we need to maintain for students to safely return to in-person learning. So we have the ability to bring students back to in-person learning, but it might just not be at their neighborhood school. And we're just going to have to look at the numbers and look at the class sizes to ensure that they're returning to a safe environment where we can maintain distancing to the best of our ability.
Okay, so that's specifically about distancing and cohorting, yes? Okay,
yes.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much. Those are my questions. Thank you, Chair Ford.
Can I just jump in and add, one of the things that we've heard loud and clear from our community is that they would like the option, should the vaccine become available for students that are 12 and under, to be able to go back to their school. And so that's why we made the decision to be able to switch, that students could go back to a school outside of the online options at the semester, should a vaccination become available for them and families choose to do so. So just wanted to add that little component about this change being responsive to what we've heard from our families who want to stay in our school district. So.
Thank you for that clarity. Director McVeigh?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted, I have nothing to add other than my appreciation to the team putting this plan together. And I love the visual of the chutes and ladders. And I think it's so apropos that our district is able to block and tackle when appropriate. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Director McVeigh. Director Bauer?
Thank you, Chair Ford. I think some of my questions are already answered. Great questions, and agree with the comment. Great presentation. There was a lot of data here. You had lots of connections with staff, community, county, state. I know you talked with neighboring school districts, and I appreciate all of that and getting that information to us. I support your plan that you've presented so far. And just want to remind people that we need to follow the law. These are mandates. If we don't, and you brought this point up that we do not, otherwise it limits our liability. And it was very clear on one of our training, OSBA Executive Director Jim Green reminded all of us board members in Oregon of that very fact. This is a continually changing, as you mentioned, situation. So, hopefully it will get healthier and that the masking won't be, eventually that, won't be a mandate and we can go on. But right now we have to follow that. There's a reason for it. One of my questions was, and I think it came up a few times in the thought exchange, was there was a stated desire by staff and parents to offer smaller classes, thus enabling 3 feet distancing more readily, or a third choice of CDL for some parents. And now you have the virtual online program and you're trying to get that staffing. So the problem is our limited staff is part of that, and also limiting classrooms. Is there more to it than that, or I think
Just
it'd be good to
clarifying,
explain.
do not have CDL, is that what you're asking?
Well, I guess I'm asking two things. What prevents us from having lower class sizes? And what prevents us from having return to school and CDL and VOP? Why can't we do it all, I guess?
Well, comprehensive distance learning is not allowed by current state law. That has been very clear by ODE, so we can't offer that any longer. That's different than somebody who needs to quarantine, and maybe we need to provide some at-home instruction during that time. We've done at-home instruction for various medical reasons off and on, but I'll let anybody else jump in on the rest of that, but I wanted to make it clear that we don't get to choose CDL as a third option at a model for all of our students next year.
I would just add that, during these times with the pandemic over the last year, we have struggled to get accurate and clear numbers on enrollment and how many kids are going to be in the class. We've had some students that have been homeschooled, some have gone in online, some's gone back and forth. So one, we're trying to get accurate numbers of what it looks like, make sure that we have adequate staffing, and that we have adequate room capacity within our buildings. And so, we can break kids down into smaller class sizes and have the staff. And if we don't have a room to put them in, that still becomes a challenge that we're dealing with. And so there's a number of different contingencies, issues that we're working through to try to make sure that we can do the best to have the smallest class sizes we can, mask up and implement the 3 feet of distance. And so we'll be working very hard to the degree possible on that.
Yeah, and I think what I would add is just that our focus really has been to ensure that kids are back in person, learning with their peers, learning from a teacher, having that interaction, and to minimize disruptions. And I think last year was just so difficult for all of us with the various models, the various programs, in and out of programs. And so in order to do something really well, we need to really focus on what the educational practices we're going to deliver, and to again focus on having kids in school 5 days a week with minimal disruptions.
Definitely. And I just think, though, just adding some background on that concern. Another question. So when is the last day that parents can register for the virtual online so that you do know your staffing?
Stafford, if you are on, I would love your help on that one.
Hello all, it's pleasure and privilege to be here. Our deadline is August 18th. If you noticed what wasn't on one of those slides, and Yvonne mentioned that over this past week, I think because of 2 factors, because of the mask mandate, and then also our opening up from a full year commitment to a semester commitment, we've had an uptick in folks requesting enrollment in VOP. So, and that date was strategically located after we could get through this process of creating the back to school plan. So again, that's middle of next week, and we'll continue to respond to what those changes. There's also been an uptick actually in students who had requested to enroll in our virtual online program back to their home school. So there's been a lot of volume coming through, and again, but the numbers continuing to slowly increase. So we'll see where we are next week.
Great, thank you. And my last comment is, in your report, there's a paragraph that I think is so important. It says everyone in our community shares in the responsibility to keep the community safe and healthy. The responsibility asks each person to both maintain their own health as well as respect other individuals' decisions. This mutual respect shown by adults in our community provides a powerful example to our children in our community. So we all need to remember, yeah, we are the adults, and we set that tone so that our kids can get back to school full time, stay there, and get their needs met. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Director Bauer. I just have one question and then one comment. My question is going back to that switch in the semester entry, which I think is great. Thank you for listening to folks about that. It's tough to make a year commitment and you don't know what's going on. That's a tough thing to do. So I think that's a really relevant switch. But what about transportation? Because one of the comments was that they may not get to their school, right, depending on sizes. So if they're in a new alternative school or a different school than what they would have been in their zone, what would that mean for transportation?
Whatever school that we place students at, not that a parent requests a transfer for their own family reasons, but if we place a student at a school that's not their choice, we would provide transportation.
Got it. Cool. Good to know. And then going back to some comments that we had inside of our thing, this is my second question. Sorry, I only have one, but I just thought of something. One of the comments made to us several times is about our equity lens. I'm well aware of our equity lens, and I know that it is infused in our decisions. But can you explain in a brief nutshell how it was infused in these decisions?
I can start, and if others have things to jump in, certainly. It's at the forefront of all of our meetings and all of what we do. Someone always inevitably asks the question. I wouldn't say inevitably, I would say purposely asks the question and purposefully asks the question, who are we leaving out? Whose voice is not in the room? Who should we be considering? Have we gathered all of the data? Are we translating these communications in other languages? What do these folks think? We're constantly thinking about who should be in the room and whose voice isn't, and how can we get that voice? And it also includes things like transportation, as we mentioned, and who is that decision going to impact more positively and negatively? And that plays into all of it. Unfortunately, we know as a system this size, we cannot possibly create the perfect system that is perfect for everyone, but we certainly do the best that we can. And if we make a mistake, if we left somebody out, we work really hard to correct that. But that's in every one of our meetings, is that we're asking those questions.
To follow what Assistant Superintendent Dutchin said, I think the other big question for us is what barriers are we creating? Both, consciously, I would say inevitably, as a consequence, somebody is going to be affected, and there might be a barrier. So when we identify that barrier, we have to think about what other options can we provide to mitigate that barrier. We know that we have a lot of different feelings. There's a lot of different opinions. And I think what our surveys and our feedback has shown is some real examples of barriers that many of us might not be experiencing. So being able to listen to our families and to hear about their experience and how our decisions are impacting them is incredibly vital to our decision making.
Excellent. I appreciate those comments. I think it's important that we all know how they're infused. I think people understand the what, but the how often is what makes people frustrated, right? Because they're just not seeing it, because they're not in the day-to-day. So I appreciate that explanation. And the only comments I have are, one, this has just been, you guys have moved the mountain one grain of sand at a time, right? And that's the most tedious way to try to move a mountain. And we continuously try to do that, and just really appreciate the consistency and the diligence and the endurance you guys have been just working through in this entire process. So just appreciate that. I want to piggyback a couple things that were said. Director Bauer brought up the fact that, we have to follow the law. I just want to remind the public that each one of the board members takes an oath to do that. We're required to follow the law, whether we like it or not. It does not mean that we don't listen to the public. It does not mean that we don't infuse the public comments in our decision-making, because our decision-making must be informed. But at the end of the day, if there is an OAR or an HB, we are not the ones to change it. That is not our job. We cannot do it legally. In fact, it could cause us some personal harm. And with that being said, I will say this: there are places that you can communicate your desires for those things to change. And I will say here that the first place I suggest you go to is the PCLA, which is our Parent Community Leadership association. What's the A stand for?
Alliance.
Alliance. And you can find that on our website in the fall time. They have a meeting where they specifically focus on what counts, which is the information that matters to the public. That's a forum that you can go to where you guys can start going to that legislative level and get your voices heard and speak to the people that can change those laws for which we uphold. Just getting clarity on where the line of hierarchy goes, it don't start here. So I hear you reading them all, but it don't start here. And the last thing I say is this: we cannot overturn the governor's decision about any of this. And if anyone wants to get in line to overturn something, there are a lot of things in the equity world that no one was standing behind us on. So if you want to start overturning stuff, let's talk about it. But it ain't going to start today. It should have started years ago. And we have a lot of catching up to do. There's bigger issues to overturn. All right, are we done with that subject? If so, we're moving right along to the next thing on the agenda, which is our transportation supplemental plan. And this is the discussion item. And the presenter is our Assistant Superintendent, Cindy Dutchin. But before we get to that, Cindy, I just want to say Director McVeigh is currently en route to travel, so he will have to leave the public meeting at this time. He wanted to make sure that everyone knew that. All right, Assistant Superintendent Dutchin, are you ready for us?
I am, thank you. And I also have with me our Director and Assistant Directors of Transportation, Kathy Calkins and James Pritchard, should you have any questions for us. Back in 2017 and the 18 months that led up to it, this district and this board, or some members of this board, but certainly the North Clackamas board, went through a process and improved what we call a transportation supplemental plan, also known as the walk zone supplemental plan. And that was approved by the board. The board also approved the criteria by which that committee, our transportation department, assesses walk zones. And walk zones are defined by state law. Again, piggybacking on what you just said, Chair Ford, there are governing laws around what we can and can't do in our transportation in providing transportation to our students. That includes a 1 mile walking distance for our elementary students and middle school students, and a 1.5 mile walking distance for our high school students. Now, that isn't just mileage. There's a lot of other things that play a part in that. And we call that our walk zone within there. And then the identified hazards. And that criteria that the board approved back in 2017 and that our committee used and our transportation department continues to use is they assess areas periodically that may have new hazards in them that did not exist before. And that could be a new traffic light, removal of a traffic light, addition of a new road, a new subdivision that has gone in, lots and lots of different factors that play into the role to determine, is that a safe walk zone for students to manage themselves to get to and from school within that mile area. We receive from the state transportation grant 70% reimbursement for all of our transportation costs, but not if it's not approved as a supplemental plan. So any students that we transport that are within that walk zone, that's on our own dime without any level of reimbursement, unless we have a documented and approved hazard zone in that area. And that's why we're coming back to you this evening. You've already approved the plan that was done a long time ago, but when there are significant changes in the number of stops or the locations, we come back to you and ask you to help us approve our supplemental, our addendum to that plan. This is coming to you this evening because there's a couple, I would say, cleaning up areas, nuts and bolts in our existing plan. We weren't very clean with the street names. We're going to go make sure we have the conventional street names, so it's very, very clear. So there's just a lot of that cleanup, which is just minimal. But we're also reducing the number of bus stops in significant areas where there's been a lot of improvement in those walk zone areas. Sidewalks is a huge game changer for families and students to safely walk around their neighborhood and get to their school. And now that we have those sidewalks in certain areas, we need to treat them like we do other areas of the district where students have been walking because they have had sidewalks all along. That's one thing. The other is we've opened up Beatrice Morrow Kennedy 2 years ago, and now we're opening up Nelson High School, and we're moving Rock Creek. So all of that shift and all of the boundary changes that result with it have students walking to different schools now. And we want to make sure that we're reflecting all of those as well. And so you can see in your board packet, the schools and the number of students impacted. I say number of students impacted with a slight quote marks, because as Superintendent James said earlier, enrollment's fluctuating. Some of these students may be involved and might not be walking at all, might be graduating, might be doing their own online school, might be homeschooling, new families are moving in. So the numbers that are in your packet are what we knew a week ago when we put this together, but they fluctuate and they change, and they may not actually show up at those stops. So it's about 100 students that we are impacting that may have previously had a bus stop, that we are proposing to you to make it more in alignment with the other parts of our district where there are those same situations, and remove those bus stops. I will say we've sent a letter to all of the families impacted in their preferred language over a week ago, and have the opportunity to share any concerns that they have with transportation. I know of at least one parent that's been communicating with James at transportation, and just clarifying questions: what constitutes a hazard? How do you determine this? Parents also have the opportunity at any time, should there be a new hazard in their area that we weren't aware of. It may be maybe some illegal activity happening routinely around a house, a lot of concern around some behavior in a particular area. Our transportation responds to that, reviews that, works with police or other agencies to determine if that is a situation that we need to be monitoring. So we can always review these stops at a later time. But tonight we're bringing to you these proposed changes to hear any concerns or questions that you have. And then we would come back at our next August meeting for decision so that we could submit that to ODE. We're here to answer questions if you have any.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that explanation and clarity. Anyone have any questions or comments?
I have.
Direct away.
Thank you, Chair Ford. And thank you for this presentation. Oh my gosh. So 136 pages in the WAC plan in 2017 is very, very comprehensive. So very well done. My questions were mostly answered. It was around how many families and kids would be impacted by the new changes. What are we doing around communication and listening to needs if there were concerns. But Cindy, can you clarify? So if families want to access the plan, can they go online and can they look at the pages that are relevant to their street and to their schools?
Yes, it's been available since the board approved it back in 2017. It's on our transportation website. And I know for sure that James has been sharing that link with parents when they have that question as well. Okay,
great. Thank you. And again, I'm just trying to look at things through the equity lens, and I see that being applied in the plan as well, which is always great. And then just my last question is, will we be who will be hearing the concerns from parents? Is it transportation department? Is it us, I guess, if parents want to come to the board? And will we be making any special accommodations in cases where the particular plan is just really not working for that family, and they have special needs or just other factors that we may need to accommodate their child?
Yeah, I'll give a first response and then see if Kathy or James have anything to add. We apply the criteria that the board approved. That almost always works. And so we're very happy with that criteria. We did let the families know that we were coming to the board. We thought that was very important, that they do have that avenue, can always share their concerns with you. But their first stop is transportation. They do need to call or email, contact our transportation department, get their questions answered. Sometimes it's just a clarification. And if there is if there's a disagreement, a true disagreement of something that has happened that they don't believe that we're listening to the family or that we didn't apply the criteria properly, properly, they would have an appeal opportunity. But certainly you may very well be getting emails or calls about this topic because it is on our board agenda. Kathy, James, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I'll just say that for someone growing up without a lot of sidewalks in her neighborhood, sidewalks are amazing. So really glad to see that investment by lots of different jurisdictions getting put in, and now our kids are going to be able to benefit next year. So thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, with the growth of the district, I know you guys know this district is growing immensely. It puts more space on our bus for kids that need the bus also. So, you know, it's just this revolving door of kids, you know, now they can walk, and kids that now need a ride. So
true. Thank you for that question, Kathy. And as a person that grew up in a concrete jungle, reading that report, it's just like, wait, this is a thing? It's incredible the amount of detail you guys got to do. I appreciate it though. When reading it, it's so necessary, right? Like, oh my God, it's how we keep our kids safe. So thank you for that. Anyone else? Questions, comments? Director Bauer, I see you, Director Benaloga. I'll get you next.
Well, I just wanted to, again, thank you for the report, but I really appreciated the hazard list. I know you said that may be just something you have internal document, but it helped me understand, you know, those areas. I've lived in the district 30 years and jogged a lot. So I kind of am familiar with some of these, but as you said, things change. But there was a comment or two where there was a hazard area like by New Urban where it said eliminate as transportation services can't get a bus down Oak Shore, Risley, but it didn't affect any students. So was that the reason it's eliminated, or I just didn't understand some of the comments.
I can field that. There's another street too that we eliminated. It's 162nd right south of the Nelson campus. And when they created this plan back in 2017, they made it a hazard area. So while it's a hazard area, we can't necessarily get a bus down it to pick up kids door to door. And so when talking to the county and what their plans are for 162nd, the county has absolutely no intent of carrying that down and making that a through street from what would be Rock Creek to the north down to the highway. So it's actually safer for our kids, elementary and middle or now high school, to walk up to the campus. When you're referencing the street right there off of River Road, we can't get a bus down in there just because of the steep grade and probably some of the overgrowth. So we would never take a bus down there anyway. And so we're faced with, how do we go about, I mean, we have bus stops that service that area, but by labeling it a hazard in this way, it may be misinterpreted by parents as we have to get a vehicle down there to get somebody door to door when we just don't have the capability of doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Director Benaloga.
Thank you. Actually, those were my questions. Were those hazard 3 that were removed? I was curious as to why they were being removed. So you answered my questions. And again, thank you for the great reporting. It's really wonderful to see the care and the concern that goes into making sure that all of our kids get to school safe. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will just close by, I have one question. The link for this, since this is something that's up for discussion and for some families, maybe they're not seeing it right away. I know it's been there for a while. Is there any way for us to put it on the front page for a little bit until we get through it, just so folks can have quicker access to it?
The front page of the website?
Yeah.
Sure.
Cool,
Yep,
that would be
absolutely.
awesome. Thank you, guys. Cool, thank you for that report. Thank you, James, for all your work. I can't imagine what kind of maps you look at every day. Us is just going all over the place. Appreciate you guys. All right, next on our agenda is our board liaison committee assignments. Director Bauer has been doing this. She did it last year, so she does a great job. So I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Ford, and I appreciate you delegating it to me. It's not a tough job because everybody cooperates and they all signed up, and I hope I got it in the right spot. You can let me know if I didn't. But want to let the public know there's at least 11 committees here. And some of these committees include a lot of work. The bargaining, when that happens, the policy is twice a month. So some of them they meet quarterly, some are monthly, and some are more. But it's an opportunity to learn more about the district and take a deeper dive and learn what operates, what are the rules, what's going on, and appreciate our fellow board members stepping up. Each committee has at least 2 or 3 members that we've assigned. And if I didn't get that assigned correct, let me know. But if you cannot make a meeting, so we have 2 or 3 members so that you can learn, but also we need at least 1 member at every meeting. So check with your fellow member and be sure at least one of you is there. If you can't, then find another board member, let Libra and I know, and I'm a little more flexible maybe with my schedule, and I'll try to cover some of those too. So thanks to our board members and the work that you do. It's important. That's all I had. Were there any comments or everybody happy? Well, maybe I'm pushing it too far.
I have a quick comment.
Sure.
I just want to thank our both our chair and our vice chairs for not only being chair and vice chair and filling their roles and responsibilities on the board, but also taking on additional assignments like this, like, trying to figure out board committees and assignments and other things that come up. So, and I know that they all get paid 6 zeros for that service. So I just want to extend my appreciations for the extra time and hours that you put in addition to just being a regular board member. So thank you.
Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you for that, Director Way. I will say that I think that we do get a love check. To me, the love check is when we see the kids succeed, right? Every time we get to go to graduations and all these wonderful stories that we do hear about kids succeeding, to me, I call that a love check. It doesn't pay bills. It's not something that I can take and buy a meal with, but it does keep me standing upright and my shoulders back and my heart feeling full. So I appreciate all the work that everyone does for this board. Next on our agenda is our protocols and operating agreements. And this is an action item. We did have this in the discussion our last meeting. So we're just looking to approve the revised board protocols and operating agreements. So I'll go ahead and open the floor for a motion.
Director Shradle, move approval of the board, the protocols and operating agreement.
Second, Director Perez.
They got you in there before you, Director Penaloy. Oh, man. Okay, Director Shradle has given us our motion and Director Perez has given us a second. Any discussion needed? Okay, seeing none. All opposed to approving the revised board protocols and operating agreements, please say aye. Hearing none. Protocols and operating agreements have now been approved. Thank you guys for that. Next on our agenda is PERS employee 6% contribution. This again is an action item. Gay Ellen has brought this to us before, and she now is coming to us for the action item. I'll pass it along.
Good evening. On June 24th, the board approved the contracts and agreements for the North Clackamas Education Association, the North Clackamas Administrators Association, the confidential non-represented employees, and the exempt administrators of the school district. The resolution before you now codifies this decision with official language, which is required by the Oregon Public Employees Retirement System. Are there any questions?
All All right, seeing none, I'll open the floor for a motion. This is an action item. Now they're giving you room, Director Benaluga. Go for it.
All right, Chair Ford, thank you. I move board approval of the superintendent's recommendation to adopt a resolution to change the type of employee contributions made to the Oregon Public Employees Retirement System from employer-paid pre-tax contributions to member-paid pre-tax contributions for all members of the North Clackamas Education Association, North Clackamas Administrators Association, confidential non-represented employees, and exempt administrators.
Properly moved. Do I have a second?
Bauer, second.
Excellent. We got a second from Director Bauer. Any discussion needed? Seeing none. All opposed to authorization to purchase replacement. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong one. My bad. All opposed to the PERS employee 6% contribution motion that was just made by Director Benaluga, please say aye. Hearing none, we unanimously approved the PERS employee 6% contribution. Thank you, guys. Next on our agenda is authorization to purchase replacement intercom system. This is Assistant Superintendent Detcham.
Good evening again. We are requesting your authorization for our superintendent to enter into contracts with GB Manchester for replacement of intercom systems at Rex Putnam High School, Oak Grove Elementary School, and Milwaukee El Puente. This would be not to exceed $180,000 as referenced. Anything over $150,000 needs to come to our board. The source of the funds is our 2016 bond funds.
Thank you for that. Open the floor for a motion.
Chair Ford, this is Director Shadle. I move approval of superintendent recommendation that states staff recommend the board grant advanced authorization to the superintendent to enter into contract with GB Manchester Incorporated for replacement of intercom systems at Rex Putnam High School, Oak Grove Elementary School, and Milwaukee El Puente Elementary School for the total amount of purchase is a not to exceed of $180,000.
Excellent, thank you. Properly moved. Do I have a second?
Bauer, second.
Oh,
I will take Director Bauer second. Thank you, guys. Any discussion needed? Okay, seeing none. All opposed to authorization to purchase replacement intercom system motion given by Director Schrader, please say aye. Seeing none, it's unanimously approved. Thank you, guys, for that. Thank you all for attending our meeting. It is currently 8:11. Just remember, all decisions are often a lifetime, and we have to think through all decisions before we make a move because we don't know who or what we're impacting. Thank you guys for coming. Enjoy your evening. Stay cool. See you guys later.